So as we get started, my name is Todd Stavrakos. I'm pastor of Gladwin Presbyterian Church, but also consultant to the Presbytery for public witness and response. And there are certain areas that we're kind of focusing in on over this next 2-year period of issues that we want to try and get more engaged in and be more of a partner in the work. And one of them is immigration and the challenges that we are seeing in immigration here in Philadelphia as well as in our nation. And so I want to thank everyone for participating and joining us. I'm been assured that this is being recorded and will be available for other people to listen and watch later. And so would hope that everybody who is on this Zoom would also encourage others to give a listen and hear about the work that is taking place to care for the immigrants and the most recent asylum seekers coming to Philadelphia. Ruth, do you want to begin us in prayer?
Yeah. For those who do not know me, mostly Peter and Blanca, I'm Ruth Santana Grace. I am the executive presbyter, which is a very non-biblical name that's used in Presbyterian circles that has me shepherding vision, hopes, possibilities alongside an extraordinary team of staff as well as pastors and ruling elders of our churches as they seek to be faithful for a time such as this. I'm grateful for, I know we'll hear from Peter and Blanca, and Todd will introduce you in a minute. We're grateful for your witness in the city. Your reputation precedes you to the likes of Adan Mairena, who is one of our minister members and who has been a significant voice in our hearts of how we might find more effective ways to get churches involved and might be small and otherwise feel overwhelmed. But what that means for them is they try to be faithful in little corners throughout the region, the greater Philadelphia area. So anyway, so we're grateful for you. And I'm just going to open us in prayer, reminding us that the reason we're here is the biblical witness reminds us to treat the stranger who sojourns with us with the kind of love that God has graced us with that we claim. So with that, join me in prayer. Gracious God, we are so grateful for the gift of individuals who just commit their lives and hearts to being voices where voices are silenced, to be faces where people are unseen, to be a conscience in a society that at this moment is polarized and culturally divided, so that we might not be absorbed only within our own communities, but be mindful of how we can be effective agents of transformation in the world. So for these gathered here, for the conversation that will happen, we offer this prayer in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. Todd, back to you. Thank you.
And not only is Ruth the executive presbyter of the Presbytery of Philadelphia, but she's also co-moderator for PCUSA and of the General Assembly. So she has several hats that she wears and frequently forgets which one it is. But she's doing extremely well with all of them. So we are greatly honored that she is with us today. I'm going to introduce our special guests and speakers, but I would ask all those who are joining us on this Zoom call, if you wouldn't mind in the chat putting your name, the faith community that you're a part of, and your email, so that we can have an opportunity to follow up with you and know who you are. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers as well, and so we will try and utilize the chat to do that. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight a couple of us here so that we can sort of have a conversation. And let me track down Blanca. She was just where I thought she was and then disappeared, but I'm going to add her there. Our special guests today are Peter Pedemonti and Blanca Pacheco, who are with the New Sanctuary Movement. They are the co-directors of an organization that has unfortunately become an essential part of the fabric of Philadelphia because of the challenges that we are seeing in immigration. The New Sanctuary Movement cares for immigrants who have come into the area and is one of the kind of primary agencies for the asylum seekers who are being bused up to the region. But it's not just sort of caring for recent immigrants, they're also lobbyists and seeking to provide for changes in legislation so that immigrants have all the abilities and opportunities that they need to be successful and to enjoy the benefits of living in the United States. Peter is one of the founders of the New Sanctuary Movement, coming from it from a Catholic worker background. And Blanca has been involved and been one of the lead organizers and advocates of New Sanctuary Movement for many years now. And so I want to thank you both for taking time out to be with us this afternoon. I've had the opportunity of working with both of you with the arrival of buses, as well as working on getting some legislation changed. And I know how busy your calendars are, so thank you very much for taking time out. And I just wanted to give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves to this community in a way that's a little less formal than what I just read off. So Peter and Blanca, let me turn it over to you for a brief introductions of yourselves.
Thanks, Reverend Todd. I can jump in first. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be here. Today we've worked with Reverend Adon for maybe like 13, 14 years, kind of partnering on the ground for everything from like things like buses to fighting for immigration reform to the sanctuary campaign to licenses. And he's been a really close partner and also leader on the ground in Philly. And have recently had the pleasure of getting to know Reverend Todd more, and so it's really nice to meet all of you. But as I said, I come to this. I've been involved for 15 years. Before this was with the Catholic Worker House in Kensington, and have been organizing for over 20 years. But come to this a little bit from my family history. Is my mother is from England, my father's from Italy. Hearing a lot of those stories, and as an adult seeing increased anti-immigrant sentiment and laws, as well as seeing their access as white immigrants as opposed to immigrants of color. But also come from this as a faith perspective, right? Reading the gospel and then seeing what's happening. I really see it as a call to action. So, and I think as a white person, right, seeing immigration is not an immigration problem; it's a problem with white supremacy in our immigration system. So, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to dive into what's happening at the border and with buses today. Blanca.
Great, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for showing up a lot lately. And yes, you're right, we have a lot going on. Well, I'm originally from Ecuador and immigrated over 20 years ago to the United States. Whenever people ask me, how did you come? I said, I took a cruise. But you can take a guess of what that means. So I've been organizing with NSM since its beginnings, since 2008 when it was forming. I'm right now holding being a co-director, and my part of my work is leading campaigns like the driver's license campaign that we are pushing to pass legislation on the state. So the state allows undocumented immigrants to apply for a driver's license using an IT number. And then as well, doing work on our programs, like the accompaniment program that has changed a lot. There is like a before and after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it used to be that we went to court hearings a lot, supporting people, standing with them in front of the judge. So the judge are able to see that there's community behind them. as well as serving as a moral support, but also witnessing the violence of the immigrant courts. For now, it has changed after the pandemic. Like, people reach out to us for several range of needs. It could be from like health issues to housing to immigration issues to school issues. So we are more like people reach out and then we connect them with resources, help people think through and make a plan on what are priorities for them, and then be able to guide them and what do they need. Also, people reach out for access to legal representation and stuff like that. So that's what I do. What else can I say about me? I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom, and I have a dog and a cat, and happy to be here to share more. Whenever we're not receiving buses, I'm hanging out with my dog, who's very healing.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to have both of you with us. And again, for those who are joining us, if you haven't done so, please go ahead and put your contact info in the chat so we can see who's with us today and follow up. The question of where to begin. So where do we begin with the present situation? Can you tell us more about what's the status at the border? Who's coming? Where are they coming from? How do they come to the United States? And then how do they get from the border regions to Philadelphia?
Sure. I can start with why are people coming? I think that's a lot of the questions that we receive. And we have find several reasons in the people that we received. I mean, we know overall is like poverty and violence. And I can share a couple of stories of what we have encountered. There was one of the buses at the beginning of last year where one of the stories inside of many was, for example, this like a Nicaraguan guy who came to the US because he was unable to support his family. He was unable to have shelter for his family. So his dreams were to be here for like a couple years, be able to support his mom to finish building his house and provide food and education for his daughter. And I think that some of the other reasons that we are finding more recently is that people are being victims of violence because they are organizing, defending natural resources. And we have heard like recently couple people who are fleeing both Honduras and El Salvador because either their homes have been burned or they have been victims of violence themselves. We have encountered also stories where one of the first buses that came out all in the news, where a mom was like looking for a better treatment for her daughter that suffered very high level of autism, and she was looking for an opportunity to help to find help for her daughter. And as well as family reunification. Like, I think in the last bus that we received, we saw like 2 of the stories that like actually like struck me was one that actually people were from my own country. The father who was waiting outside of the bus, and I asked him like, who was he waiting for? Who was he looking for? And he'd say his son, who he has left when he was 2 years old. And after 17 years, he was reuniting with him. So it's very, very emotional, and it's family reunification around that. We also witnessed a kid probably between 6 and 7 years old reuniting with his father after a year separation, where the kid like ran into his father's arms and broke down, and just noticed the father repeating to him, "We're not going to get separated anymore. We'll be together. Don't worry." But the kid wouldn't stop crying. Very traumatic situation. So people are fleeing because of trauma, violence, poverty. We also heard from people from Central America, like their lands are not producing anymore. Global warming is another reason where people are fleeing. And we have noticed people mostly at the very beginning were people from Venezuela, that many of them have been traveling for months, or have been waiting at the border for months and even years, like traveling through different countries. And facing like really unimaginable trauma. People from Nicaragua, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, there was like the first buses last year where a lot of people from Colombia recently are more Hondurans are coming in, and we're like noticing more people from Central America as well. We have received some people from Russia, and also some people from Haiti in the buses itself, but outside of the buses have been other people from other nationalities as well. I don't know if you have anything else to add about that, Peter, but those are more like kind of the reasons that we're noticing people are getting here in the US.
Yeah, thanks, Blanca. And then, so what we're seeing at the border is, there because of all those push factors, there are a lot of people migrating to the US and all over the world. I mean, there's the highest level of people migrating, I think, since World War II, or even higher than that. And, this spring, we heard a lot of media around like chaos at the border. There's a huge surge at the border. And I wanted to talk about that for a second. I mean, I think one, to back up, right? Title 42, if we remember, is around a pandemic, right? Using a pandemic as an excuse to sidestep asylum laws that are internationally recognized, and in our own law, in our own congressional law, in the U.S., giving the U.S. an obligation to follow asylum rules. Using COVID-19 to sidestep that. And Trump did that because, right, in his very aggressive anti-immigrant agenda, had found a way to turn people away. And so used that, and used a public health rule to turn people at the border. And so that should have been lifted immediately. And so as that was ending, there was more and more people getting ready to cross. And I think the second point there, right, is that the media talked about like the masses at the border. There's going to be this huge surge. What are we going to do? Politicians were getting nervous. Biden was getting nervous. And I think it's important to like pull back and actually realize that, there is enough. We are so much is feeding into this idea of scarcity, and there is not enough when our neighbors show up at our doorstep. And I think very much that comes right from white supremacist thinking of scarcity, of there's not enough, competing for resources. And I do think Christianity offers us an alternative to that, right? That when Jesus broke bread and multiplied the loaves and the fish and fed 5,000 people, was inviting us into God's economy, to knowing that if we all share, there is enough for all of us. And I think that's what I appreciate about working around immigration from a faith perspective, is that we can invite people into that space. And then as Title 42 lifted, what we're seeing now, there isn't as many people crossing. The reason for that is because of Biden's new policies on the border. So Biden was facing increased pressure and ended up caving to the right, and so passed a number of anti-immigrant policies and rules, continuing to gut the asylum system. The reason he did that is because we often see this where Democrats end up giving in on immigration. And one thing that I heard recently, which I feel like explains a lot of it, is right, like immigration for Republican voters is in the top three. The top two or three concerns. For Democrat voters, it's not even in the top five. And so, right, like I think when the Biden administration looks at that, how much, if they do something positive on immigration, how much political traction or political gain they're going to get, it's lower as opposed to what they could lose. And so he ended up caving and passing a few anti-immigrant pieces. And so what those are is, one is a transit ban. So this says that if people pass through another country before they get to the US, they have to apply for asylum and be rejected before they can apply in the US. This is something that Trump tried to roll out. This is a Trump tactic. Another one is the humanitarian parole. So if you remember in January, they said that people from Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela can have access to this humanitarian parole. And in very effective PR strategy sounded like a good thing. Like when I heard it, I was like, oh, this is great. There's a pathway. So it's 30,000 people a month, but the catch is that people need to have a sponsor in the US. They need to apply via an app. They need to get to a port of entry or an airport, and so buy a plane ticket. And so automatically you're cutting out a lot of people. And as you can guess, a lot of those people are people who are poorer, and who have less resources and have less connections. And what it allows is them, all those people from Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela who don't have that, who show up at the border, are turned away. The third thing is trying to move this to getting people to schedule their appointments at the border via an app. I think it's called Customs One or something like that. But so people need to have a phone. We have met many people on the bus who have lost their phone or gotten their possessions stolen, and so that sets up a barrier. And then, as we all know, right, when government rolls out new technology and there's a lot of demands, it crashes. And so there's stories of people waiting at the border who are trying, how they spend their days is trying to get through this app and trying to get an appointment. But I think they offer about 1,000 a day. And so there's people who've been waiting months and months for this. And as they wait, right, there's very high rates of assault, of robbery and sexual assault as people are waiting. And I think, again, I think being at the buses, being on the ground, at 5:30 in the morning, welcoming people, I think, and I'll talk about this in a second, but there's some clear lessons. And I think one of those is that regardless of how people show up or why they show up, whether they fit the certain categories of deserving, we need to welcome them. And I think it was very frustrating and disappointing to see Biden cave as opposed to step into, that moral question as a country. What do we do when people show up on the border? And maybe I can talk a little bit about how the buses work, and then I'll hand it over to Blanca about sort of what happens when they get here.
Sounds good.
Okay, so when we first started getting buses, this was in November. I actually got a phone call. I was getting my kids ready for school. It was like 7:30 in the morning, getting the oatmeal ready and making sandwiches for lunch, and got a call from a pastor we work with, a Mennonite pastor we work with, saying an organizer friend in DC had gotten word that Philly was getting a bus. And he had shared some information about the contact in Texas. And so we connected with this woman who runs a shelter, and she confirmed we were getting a bus. And so, we had been working with the city of Philadelphia and a host of immigrant justice organizations preparing for this, and so rolled that out. But when the buses first came, we weren't sure if they were Governor Abbott's buses or if it was just an agency who had people going to the northeast. And I think what became clear in that gray area was that thing I just mentioned, was like, we're not sure how these folks are getting here, but that doesn't seem to matter. And what matters is that when people come to Philly, is that they're greeted with love, they're welcomed with a smile, and with solidarity, like really listening to them, hearing what they need, and supporting them to move on. And as we learned, it was Governor Abbott. I think there was also nuance in that, right? I think what Governor Abbott was up to is moving people and using people as pawns to score political points is not, like, that is terrible and morally reprehensible. But there's also how it was painted in the media was right, Republican governor versus sanctuary city mayors. And it wasn't that clean cut, right? I think the people who are coming to us did want to go to the Northeast. They have family or friends or connections in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Philly. And in the shelter, how it works, they do an announcement for a Philly bus or a New York bus, and people get on. And for a long time, I think the shelter had people who wanted to go Northeast or Midwest, but didn't have money. And so, when Abbott crafted his strategy, the shelter and was going to send people regardless. And I think the shelter, they reached out to the shelter and asked if they would do it, and they were going to do it anyway. So I think the shelter wanted to have some control. But I think there's nuance in there, and it's not as clear cut. And I think the other piece that is there is a reality that the border towns and agencies were being overwhelmed. And in that case, I think the whole country should step in. Like, we should all hold that. And I think it's also become clear the way Philly has been able to, I think, very effectively respond to this is by working in community. And so I do believe if there's more people at the border, the whole country should be stepping up, and Philly included. And I think that becomes a lesson for not just Governor Abbott, but President Biden, right? That the gospel is really clear about this, right? Like, Matthew 25, it judges nations on this. And I think I'm very proud of our team and our city around how we have responded. And we do think Biden, right, should stop gutting the asylum system. They should be investing in welcoming infrastructure to make sure people are welcomed with respect, with dignity. And also, another problem, and there should be work permits provided. People who are in the process for asylum can get work permits, except there's such a backlog now. It's taking, right, it takes a while for people to even apply. And then there's, like, I think, correct me, Blanca, I think a 6-month or more wait to even get that. And so they should be expediting that so people can get on their feet and get settled faster.
So are most of the individuals who are in the border area and have found it to a shelter where they might be bused somewhere, have they all filed for asylum and they're all pending, or what's the situation in terms of that status?
What has happened is that they have had an interaction with the immigration, and they had opened a case for them.
Okay.
They have not done the paperwork to apply for asylum yet. They do not have a work permit application yet. So a lot of that guidance, we have to do it, and also other partner organizations are doing it in the center. And then we're also connecting them with resources wherever they're going and orienting them that what they need to do is get legal support as soon as they get whatever they need to get, because all of their cases are open in Texas. And if they don't change the case to the new direction, to the new address, then the case will stay in Texas. So if they have a court in 2 months or 5 months, if they haven't done the change, that could be problematic because judges could declare deportation and absentia.
Okay.
So that's not open. And yes, work permits, between sending an intention to apply for asylum application and applying for a work permit, it could be a year or more to be able to have a work permit. And that's really hard because people are not coming for handouts. They're like waiting to go to work, and they want to go to work. But without a work permit and a social security, it's like really hard. Okay. And there's a lot of orientation that needs to happen. Just yesterday, we were talking with somebody who thought that going to get the city ID will be able to open an opportunity to work. And people get confused, and there's a lot of orientation that is needed in that area.
Okay. So pick it up from there. So individuals are down in the border area, and they hear that there's a bus to Philadelphia. So they get on the bus, and we greet them at 30th Street Station. And then what happens from there?
Sure. So we hear that the bus might be coming like 36 years in advance. We get a text of like a partner organization there in Texas. And right now, in these last couple months, sometimes it gets here at night, like between 9 and 10 p.m. or in the morning, 6 a.m. they said. So once we get the alert, that gives us a chance to mobilize our volunteers. We have a group of over 20 volunteers that are trained and are bilingual and are able to show up with us. When we go at 5:30 in the morning, it has to be very early. And, some people pick up coffee, other people bring juice for kids. There's a doctor that the city sends in case somebody needs health assessment or health support. We do receive them when the bus gets here. We make an announcement in the Texas bus. Sometimes the drivers are really mean. They don't let us in, or they let us in for a quick announcement. And we have different experiences when we get there. I was just talking with one of our volunteers that each bus brings different energy, different emotional weight, and different, depending what has happened to people in that bus. So sometimes people are just like tired and upset and want to get done with all this tiring journey. Some people are excited to like be welcomed by friendly people. So then the city of Philadelphia provides a SEPTA bus to be able to decide, and there our volunteers help assess every case to see what are their plans in their journey. Are they staying here in Philly? Do they have family picking them up? Sometimes they do, and right there in the bus station. Are they traveling to another state, or they have nowhere to go? So we are looking to, our goal is for people to get to whichever destination they're going, to get there safe, and also help people decide, because some people, for example, there was a family of 5, like 2 buses ago, that they wanted to get whatever their destination in Connecticut, like as fast as possible, even though they have been traveling in that bus for over 20 hours, and they were hungry and tired. They have little kids. So our role, some of the volunteers' role, was to help them decide what is best, both for them, for the kids. The kids were hungry, so we suggested them go to the center that the city of Philadelphia has activated, eat something, take a shower, get legal orientation if it was available, and then catch a bus later. And they're resistant, but we give them time to decide. And finally, they decided to go to the center because they were worried about their children being too tired to continue the journey. And then some people who are waiting for family members, sometimes family members are an hour away, so we assign volunteers to wait with them and support them with that connection. Once everybody decides that they're going to the center, the SEPTA bus that the city provides travels from 30th Street to North Philly to the center, where they get like a more in-depth assessment, because we're also watching for human trafficking, victims of human trafficking. So we're making basic questions, and the center is deeper evaluation. They get breakfast or dinner if it's late. They get a change of clothes in there, and then there's like a team that helps them get tickets to wherever they're going. Did I miss anything, Peter? But that's kind of like the image. We get the message, we mobilize our volunteers, we get there, we make sure that we offer a warm drink, there's health assessments, and then we assess each case on what is their need, and helping people decide what they need to do at that moment, and then deeper assessment in the center to then finally support them to go to the final destination.
We just to add on to that, we have a couple of pictures to show that helps, that can like paint a picture of what Blanca said. Let me share my screen. So this is these photos are from, can everyone see this? Okay. These pictures are from Rodney Atienza, who's a professional photographer and does really amazing work and volunteers to take pictures, and has been coming to different buses. So this is, you all recognize Reverend Adon here. So this is him, I believe, playing with a kid who is inside the bus. But right, Reverend Adon is one of a team of probably about like 15 people who we have ready to come down, and we usually have a team of probably like 9 people who, you know, folks who are bilingual, who have experience with migrant communities, understand solidarity work, and who meet at 5:30 in the morning. And Reverend Don gets the coffee from Wawa every morning at 5, and then comes down, offers a prayer, works with people. Blanca, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just I think that, you know, Adan was sharing that he was playing peekaboo with the kid inside the bus, but we were trying to figure out if it's the same kid that thought there was like a baby, probably like 8 months, Reverend Dan got into the bus to do the prayer at the beginning, and the baby thought that was hilarious. The baby wouldn't stop looking at him and laughing. So yeah, there's like hard stories, but there's also like sweet stories like those. Like that baby was, I don't know how the prayer was funny to her, but she was like really laughing on Reverend Dan.
Yeah, and this is right. This is a volunteer. I think this is Berta actually, and a little baby in the background, kind of going through and finding out where are people going, where are people from, when are they leaving, and trying to get kind of a list of folks so we can pass it on to our partners at the welcome site. This spring, in the winter, we definitely had a lot of single men, and this, as they started up again in May, it's high number of kids, where about half the bus are kids, and it's all family units. This is a family from the other day who he's showing us a picture of people of the group, walking through the jungle, and just all the struggles, like, and just I think this image really captures the long journey people have been to, both crossing through Central America, getting through the border, dealing with immigration, being in a shelter, and then being on a 40-hour bus ride. And I think one thing that I always appreciate about Blanca is reminding all of us not to see this as people as victims, but really seeing like the strength of families, and people are strong and have made it this far and cross borders, and have a lot of agency. This is outside the SEPTA bus, one of the little babies. While we sit there, probably takes about like 45 minutes to just pass out coffee, kind of go through everyone, check in with everyone, see who's moving on or has family, and then continue on. These are two brothers who were reunited after, I believe, 7 years from Venezuela, and who wanted a picture in front of 30th Street. And again, as Blanca was saying, like these really beautiful moments of family reunification. Here's Ms. Pacheco giving the orientation, making sure people know that they're not detained, and we're not a government agency, and that we're there to help, but people have the right to accept or reject help. Because people often go through so much, right? And like aren't sure, right? Like we want them to know that we're organizations and are there to support them. Here's a family at the Greyhound bus station, getting ready to head out. I think they were going to New York. And this is actually a woman who was having some health problems, and ended up going to the hospital for the day. And this is someone from Office of Emergency Management, sort of like chatting more with her. These are some clothes donations. One of the little kids who came. And it is the same family, but I like this one, just seeing the joy. And I think remembering too, right in the media, so often we hear about buses, and right, like so important to remember these are like families and kids and parents on those buses, and the trauma and hardship, and also the joy that they bring. This is the same one. We're getting a health assessment. This is Sister Pat, who's a sister of St. Joseph, and one of the volunteers, helping find some extra clothes. Sometimes people will come with, if they've crossed the border, if they get anything wet in the river, the border confiscates it, and they release them usually with like sweatpants and these flip flops you see. So when they get to Philly, in the winter, we would always have coats to give people, but still, even in the spring, like now at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's cold or it's chilly. And so often like West Kensington Ministry or Sister Pat's group will bring extra fleeces or sweatshirts. And Blanca or Reverend Adan, if you want to jump in and share anything about these pictures, please feel free. Here's another family. this is the Texas bus actually pulling up. And people come on down. We usually form just a line of people just welcoming them. And one thing I think that's so important, that's really basic, is just welcoming people with a smile and good morning and welcome, and kind of making people feel welcome. And this was during Mother's Day. So we had a bus on Mother's Day. We almost often get a bus on any kind of holiday. Like in Christmas Eve, there was 2 or 3 buses. New Year's Eve, there was 2 or 3. Mother's Day, I think this is Reverend Adon here. But we brought flowers and paper for the kids to sort of make a card for their mom if they wanted to. And here's another one of a volunteer passing out flowers. And here's a little circle of his Anna, our accompaniment organizer, and kind of circling up before, just saying a prayer as we get ready to welcome the bus. And I think that's it.
So I spotlighted Adon as well, and I wanted to make sure that we mention not only Adon's role in what he's been doing with this the bus accompaniment program, but it was sort of his vision and leadership that kind of prompted us once again as a presbytery to how do we mobilize to reach out and be a part of welcoming the Sojourner. And so Adon reached out to me and others about how do we help receive and welcome them, and clothing was one of the areas. And so as we saw Sister offering clothing, that was the back of Adon's SUV that many congregations on this Zoom call help gather clothing for. And I learned the other day that Rodney is a member at Overbrook Presbyterian Church. So there are connections here within our connectional church of how we are responding. And hopefully we can come up with a more sustained and forward-looking response. Adon, is there anything you want to add to your experience with helping welcome our new neighbors?
I think we've covered it all. I mean, it's powerful. It's emotional. I mean, you've been there a couple times, and you never know what's going to happen. You got to follow the 11th commandment that says, "Thou shalt be flexible." So I know for us Presbyterians, sometimes that's a little challenging. But like, for example, on a Sunday morning, to be there at 6 and then going to have to lead worship and all that. Todd showed up one day and he had to take people to the airport. So it's humbling. And again, these folks are an inspiration. So it's great. And to get the support of Presbytery and the clothes, and Todd has been amazing, and just like responding to immediate needs, like, backpacks and women's products and buying shoes at the last minute. So it's been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to more of our Presbytery getting involved in whatever capacity.
So, and that's a great segue. So we anticipate we're going to continue receiving buses and welcoming buses into Philadelphia. And at the same time, we're also, and Peter and Blanca can, if I'm wrong, people are flying into Philadelphia, and there's other avenues that people are getting to Philadelphia. And, we do have, as Christians, we do have that calling of how do we receive the stranger? How do we receive the sojourner? How do we live out, Matthew 25? And we as a presbytery have officially adopted Matthew 25 as our understanding and as our vision. So as we think about how we can be more welcoming, and then not just welcoming, but then how do we help people and walk with people as they establish themselves in Philadelphia? So I wanted to kind of begin that conversation of what are going to be the challenges going forward beyond just welcoming and getting people to the welcome center and helping to make sure they're healthy and then determining where they might want to go, whether they want to continue on to see relatives or if they want to stay in Philadelphia. What are forward-looking areas that we could be a part of addressing with New Sanctuary Movement in the city and other advocates for the immigrants?
I think there are a couple of things. Just looking at the images, like, it really makes me emotional because I cannot stress enough how important it is for all of us to not just see people as, victims, and even though they're coming through with a lot of pain, like, but as people that are strong, that have skills, that they need just guidance and orientation and support, and what do they want to do next, and helping them see options. And I think in that end, flexibility is like really, really important on the needs that people have. Like, just as an example, as Peter was saying, there was a time when a lot of single men were coming, and there was a time when full families were coming. Now we're receiving lots of babies, like from like 13 days born to like, all the way to teenagers. So the needs are changing. So when we're talking about clothes, I think it has been like a deep blessing having West Kensington Ministry to be able to store the donations, because NSM is a small house, and there was a moment where we couldn't even come inside the office. So we had to make a decision that we don't have space to get donations. So it has been a blessing to have West Kensington Ministry as a place to hold that. Because also the center where people are going also has a very small space to hold donations, so that has been good. And then the flexibility about what we need, because what we needed last month might not be what we need this month, because again, it's changing. And I think there are a couple needs in the short term. So short term, like kind of in the first days, is like clothes, care packages, essential needs for people to survive. And then also accompaniment for the people that are staying here, who might have court hearings, who might be working on finding a job, in connecting with other people, and then kind of trying to make a plan for them to become independent and to find their own place at some point. And that's work that we need to do to support with them. Legal representation is another challenge, because the organizations that traditionally has supported with legal work are overwhelmed, and they don't necessarily has a lot of opening to like help with all the legal cases. They can help at the beginning, but then they will need to find their own lawyer. They also have to go to ICE check-ins. So accompanying people to that check-in with immigration is important as well. And then helping them make sure that their cases are relocated and are changed to the new place that they are going to be living. Again, jobs. It's hard because people don't have a work permit, but they have to figure it out. And then through connections, they have found jobs. Housing is another thing that people who are staying is in struggle. So the center has a limited time. Of course, they have not kicked anybody out, or there has a limited time of, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, 60 days, I think it is, that they could stay in the center, and they're fed. They have support in any area that they need support. And then they should be working on to moving on to find their own place. It's been really good to see. I saw this in the last week's bus. People who were helped at the beginning of at the end of last year, immigrants that came to the Welcome Center, are now engaged volunteering. So they come to support, welcome the new arrivals, and I have been coming to the space, even as a simple task to like help them find their room. So that has been nice to see. And then long term, we also need to work on policy change, advocacy, and organizing. as Peter was mentioning before, like the asylum system is outdated and it's not working, and people are struggling, even though they're being authorized to enter and are entering legally, quote unquote. They don't have the legal documentation to be able to survive. In long term as well, for people who are staying here, we have heard stories at different times that people have considered moving to New Jersey or New York because those states allow people to have a driver's license, and they might be able to find a job if they have a driver's license. So we have a campaign here about that, and then we're thinking for the recent arrivals, but also for people like me, like myself, that have been living here over 20 years and don't have access to driver's licenses. So we have been pushing legislators, especially the leadership of the Democratic House, to be able to pass a legislation that will allow all immigrants, regardless of all people in Pennsylvania, regardless of immigration status, to access the driver's license. We are inviting people to join us if you have constituents, and Representative Bradford, Representative McClinton, Rep. Dan Miller, Rep. Harris, and Representative Nelson, to help us identify constituents that can help us convince them to make driver's license bill a priority. So that's the advocacy. So it's the immediate needs for like survival, the intermediate needs, that is like legal representation and helping them figure it out if they can get any type of status, and then the long term also policy change that we need to advocate. And one of the things that I will say, at least for us as NSM, we really strongly work very intentional with all immigrants that reach out, because we don't want to make people dependent, because it's not sustainable, because it's not healthy for people themselves. And we really work parting from a place that immigrants should have agency and decision-making on what they want to do and what they need to do for their own lives. So instead of, I don't know what part of the Bible it says, but instead of giving them the fish, it's like teaching them how to fish. So then they become self-sufficient and they become, and I see like Peter and Todd smiling.
It's always
I
good
don't
when
know
you
my
remind
Bible
us of the
numbers.
scripture, Blanca.
Is it in the scripture?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we are like teaching people how to fish instead of giving them the fish, because it's neither healthy, neither sustainable, but like really helping people see, make a plan for their lives long term and prioritize of what they need, and then we coming as in solidarity to support folks. Did I forget anything, Peter?
I put in the one of the other individuals who works with Blanca and Don and Peter is Melissa Reynoso, who is a member at West Kensington, and she sort of keeps me up to date on what some of the more urgent needs are at the Welcome Center. I put that information in the chat. There's a document because we are seeing younger children, infants and toddlers. There's a need for diapers. There's a tremendous need for diapers, and then baby lotion and stuff like that. An ongoing need is feminine products, clothing for the little kids, shoes, kind of sturdy working shoes and sneakers for men and women. And we are next week, I'm hoping that we will have a landing page on the Presbytery's website discussing the needs, and we're hoping that this information will be circulated amongst the communities, and you can reach out to me, etc. There will be the webinar will be recorded, will be on the website. It's the Presbytery's website. So Peter, any other thoughts? I mean, we've covered a gamut of information, and certainly we do have time for folks if they have questions, individual questions. That would be wonderful. But Peter, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I mean, I think fundraising is always a piece. There's a ton of work that both Reverend Adon and West Kensington and we do behind the scenes that is not funded, and that's always a need.
So one of the exciting possibilities that we're looking into is helping to house a family or two. And we are presently in conversations, the we being New Sanctuary Movement, the Presbytery and West Kensington Ministry, of providing housing for a couple of families for a transitory period to help them get settled, get established, kind of make that move out of the Welcome Center into another housing situation, finding work, etc. And so one of the things that that is more immediate, if you have time or people in your congregation who want to help clean the house that we're looking at, please be in touch with me, because we're trying to do that this weekend. And that information has gone out as well. But that's certainly an opportunity for folks who want to lend a hand this weekend. Adon, are there other things that are needs, or other things that congregations could be doing to lend assistance?
No, I think you covered it all. I mean, there's plenty of stories. Obviously, you and I have talked about stories and how powerful that is. And as this continues, the more folks get engaged, you can put human faces to this and kind of drown out all the noise that sometimes the media and rhetoric and kind of gets in the way. So just get engaged.
Address for donations. I'm going to assume they're talking about New Sanctuary Movement.
Yeah.
Always write a check to the Presbytery and say, immigration, and we'll receive it. But more importantly, what's the best way to make a donation to New Sanctuary Movement?
Either sending a check, I can put the address. The address is on the website, or there's a donation page on the website. I can put both of those in the chat.
Okay, great. I really want to thank our guests. I like to pretend I'm busy, and I always tell people I'm busy. Peter and Blanca are busy, and I really want to thank them for taking the time to be with us. And I really want to tell you how much I appreciate the work you are doing. I've been there for a couple of the buses. The fact that you guys are there, you're on your game, you have people there who really care, and the fact that you're not only working on the driver's license legislation, but you're also dealing with all the accompaniment programs that you're a part of. And so I want to thank you for that work that you are doing and for being available to us today. For those of you who are on this Zoom call, these are wonderful people, and I'm not just talking about Peter and Blanca. I'm talking about the people that we meet and welcome on the buses. Wonderful people, strong, courageous, and it's special to be there, just to be a smiling face for them. But how do we continue that feeling for them as they stay in Philadelphia? And I think that's the call that we are beginning to answer. And there's much more that we need to do as a faith community. And as Adon says, block out all the political nonsense one way or the other, because there are people coming who are looking to find a home and a place to be loved. And if it's not the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, then I'm not quite sure where it would be. And so we will be in touch. We will be continuing to reach out and to provide opportunities to support the work of not only the New Sanctuary Movement, but other entities that are working to provide for immigrants throughout the city in Delaware Valley. And so I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day and for being a part of this. I want to thank the Presbytery staff for coordinating and making this available. And Ruth, I don't know if you have any last reflections you want to offer up and as we bring this time to a close.
She stepped away from her computer.
Okay. All right. So why don't we close with a word of prayer and let us pray. Gracious Lord, we are mindful of the call that is continually repeated throughout Scripture to welcome the sojourners, to welcome those who are in your midst. The true mark of the people of God are those who care for those who are sojourners, who are vulnerable, who are looking for a better way. So we thank you for the work that's being done through people like Peter and Blanca and organizations like New Sanctuary Movement. We pray that the Presbytery of Philadelphia will hear your call as we seek to provide for your children. Work through each of us, work through our individual communities to respond to the need that we find in our world and in our society. And may your Spirit continue to guide us and nourish us that we would be your faithful servants. Bless our day and bless our evening. This we pray in Christ's name. Amen.